This week, we continue our travels through Japan as we take you on an intimate journey into the life and work of internationally acclaimed artist Sarah Brayer, whose work has captivated audiences around the world. Renowned for her large-scale poured washi paper works and aquatint prints, Kyoto-based American artist Sarah Brayer has pursued her passion for traditional washi paper since the 1980s. Receiving many prestigious awards, including the Ministry of Culture's Commissioner's Award for International Dissemination of Japanese Culture through her unique creations in Echizen washi. Sarah's artistic odyssey began with the fascination for Japanese art, leading her to explore printmaking in London and eventually embark on a life-changing backpacking adventure to Japan. Captivated by Kyoto, she started creating aquatints of her surroundings and soon established herself as an artist with solo exhibitions in Kyoto and New York City. Her artistic explorations extended to Japanese woodblock printing and colour aquatint techniques, deepening her connection with Japanese art traditions. Sarah's dedication to her craft led her to establish a studio in Kyoto and collaborate with local artisans. A pivotal moment came when she encountered poured paperwork during a visit to a paper mill in New York City, which unlocked a new dimension of artistic expression. This technique, blending chance and design, resonated deeply with her, leading her to the ancient Japanese paper center of Imadate in Echizen, Japan. Here, she began creating large-scale paper images and editions, often incorporating aquatint prints into handmade washi. Sarah remains the only Western artist to continuously create works in Echizen since 1986. In 2010, her captivating Luminosity series introduced phosphorescent pigments, bringing radiant light directly into her art. Her style of blending the traditional with her original vision has won her international acclaim. Throughout her career, Sarah's works have been showcased in renowned institutions around the world, including the British Museum and the Sackler Gallery of the Smithsonian. Notably, in 1992, she became the first artist ever to exhibit at the Bodleian Inn, a World Heritage Temple dating back to the Heian period. Sarah divides her time between Kyoto, Echizen, and New York City, continuously exploring new realms in her craft. In this intimate conversation, you'll uncover Sarah's inspirations, creative process, and the profound impact of Japanese culture on her art. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming Sarah Brayer as our 102nd Friday feature artist, an artist whose talent knows no limits and whose art speaks directly to the soul. We're here in Kyoto with the wonderful Sarah Brayer, and thank you once again for having us. This was very short notice to come and visit Sarah, and we're so lucky to be here in her beautiful studio, where we'll probably take a little look around a bit later. But Sarah, tell us, how did you come to be here in this amazing place?
Wow, I've been in Japan a long time now, but it originally started, was an adventure after I finished college, and I had the chance to come to Japan with a friend, and the plan was to hitchhike around the country. I wanted to be an artist, I knew that, and I was trying to figure out the transition between being a student artist and working artist. But first off to Japan, and I wanted to see more of the world, basically, and was quite taken by Japanese prints and also ceramics.
Yes.
So what started out as an adventure turned into more of a place to live, although that took a number of years for me to come to realize that.
Yeah.
And so, it just, it was really an amazing place, and every day was different. There were lots of challenges because I did not have that language when I first got here. But what really was amazing was after getting to Kyoto, which was maybe like 2 months into the trip, and finding a little place to live, I met some other artists, and I realized I could continue printmaking, which I had really focused on my last year in college. And so my first work was little etchings, small etchings that I etched in. I had a half mat kitchen in a 4.5 mat room.
Oh, yes, because you measure in mats. Wow,
right.
I can imagine how small that is.
It was really small.
Yeah.
But it was really great because what I discovered was that I could eventually teach English part-time 3 nights a week, and that was enough to live on. And that was really amazing to me because I had my days free.
Yes.
And so I started to go out and explore Kyoto, and I did a lot of on-site sketching.
Yes.
And then, did this etching in my kitchen, and then found a lovely woman who had an etching press, and she allowed me to come there. And I started to go and print my prints at her place. And then just it started to build, and one thing led to another. And one particular thing that happened that probably changed the course of things was that some friends invited me to be in a show, and we got together our prints, and to my surprise, some of my work sold.
Wow.
So that really changed my focus, and because I had assumed I would go back to the States and get a master's degree and teach.
Yes.
Probably.
Yes.
Because that's what the artists I knew had, that sort of lifestyle. Yeah.
That first sale, it's so important, isn't it? You'll never forget that. Yeah. It just changes the trajectory of like, wow, somebody wanted my work.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so, often, some people are really wonderful and born teachers, but many artists teach as a way to support themselves. But
yes, they do. Yes, I've met a few. That's one thing we love to do. We love to champion the arts and and help people make a great living through teaching, because we do feel that your knowledge is so valuable. 43 years of accumulated knowledge. It should be valued. In one way or another. So
thank you.
Yeah. So tell us about Washi in particular. What drew you to it, and how did you discover it?
Yeah, so Washi, I'd always loved Japanese paper, and I had tried painting watercolor on it with pretty disastrous results. It's very hard to paint on unless you have some technique behind you.
Yeah, I bet.
Or size the paper, or lots of things.
Yeah.
But because I was doing etching, I started to do shinkolei on Washi. And I was working on print. I could buy Washi quite easily here in the Washi store. But it was really one time I was back in New York, and I was making a really complex print, lots of different parts, and collaging the Washi onto a backing paper and then printing on top of that. I started to think, I wonder if I could make my own paper. And that led me to a paper studio in New York named Dieu Donne, a wonderful place where artists work. And when I went into the studio and watched the process, I realized that kind of art making with paper would be something I could do in Japan. So I was already living in Japan, and so that really helped, lit a spark for me.
Yeah.
And then when I came back to Japan, I was really hot to find a place to work. And I really had no contacts. So I went to my local paper store, and I asked Mr. Taki, who was always really nice to me, and we had I could always communicate with him easily. So I asked him if he knew a place I could work with washi paper.
Yes.
And he sort of nonchalantly says, well, my brother has a place. And of course, I jumped on the opportunity, like, let's go there.
Let's go now.
Right? And I was about 2.5 hours away.
Yeah.
So we went up pretty soon after that discussion, and I walked in the door, and it was just what I had fantasized. They had the big screens.
Yeah.
So I was just really impressed and excited, and I had this idea that wow, just the possibilities of what you could do with the fiber. But if you could do it big, especially you could do big gestures, and you could make works that really sort of pushed the medium beyond what I was seeing. I hadn't really found any interesting paper works in Japan at that point.
Yeah. There's a beautiful video on Sarah's website which shows Sarah creating 8 large panels.
Yes.
Gorgeous panels, and it went into a temple. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And we will direct people to go and watch that video, of course, but watching you, and that's where you're working in that paper factory, and you can see now knowing the story, you can actually see the love between you and your fellow workers there. It's really quite beautiful to watch and witness, and then to see you all working, because it's very much a collaborative process, isn't it? You can't do it on your own that big.
Right, not that big.
No,
you really can't, and there's limitation to the large paper has to then be picked up by 2 people and put into a stack to dry. And
yes.
So, it's really teamwork.
I was mesmerised by how you pick it up, and it's done silently almost too. I didn't hear that there was too much communication, but you could just feel the body movements of people.
Yeah,
and then they roll it down.
That is actually, you have to practice that a long time.
Yes.
And I mean, at one point I thought I should really learn to do that, but it's incredibly hard and it's really heavy. You would not believe how heavy that screen is.
Because it's wet,
Yes. So, so that move where they sort of pick it up and then they take a breath and then they slowly roll it down and then the paper rolls off. But it's like very, I don't know. I mean, you just, it's a touch thing. You do it enough and then you have the touch.
Yes. You can see it though on the video. You can, if you really, I could see it. I could see it. And because I suppose like with videography as well, there's a lot of communication in silence because you don't want to talk over what's being filmed. And I love watching people communicate without words. It's really quite special. Yeah. So anyway, sorry. I digress. I just thought that, the factory was just beautiful. And was when you layer the coloured washi over the top of the white, is that something that you developed yourself, or is that an older technique that you've contemporized? Yeah,
so, there are numerous techniques that are used in washi making, and at the particular place I went, they specialize in what's called fusuma paper. And so that's the paper for large doors, and they have stencils where they'll make small design elements on a large sheet of paper, like a mountain, or it could be a circle or something like that, and they pour into the stencil. So that way of working I observed, and then the women who were doing the different tasks to make the paper, they also would come over and just like show me, especially if I didn't have the touch. They would just come over and kind of nudge me along, which was really great. I learned a lot that way.
And were you speaking the language by that stage, or just starting to pick it up?
The dialect in Fukui is really different than Kyoto, and so that was challenging. But also the whole pace when you work with craftspeople or shokunin in Japanese, like they just are like moving along, and there's no fooling around. And I really loved that quality. I loved the sort of like, it's so minimalized, and you don't have wasted movements or anything.
Yes. Yes.
But of course, what I do is really slow compared to what a crew of paper makers who are making, for instance, 50 sheets for a day. I maybe only make 4.
Yes.
Right? And so they were really surprised to see how slowly I worked and how I'd spend time thinking about it, like looking at it, especially at the beginning.
Yeah. But with great respect, you can see there's huge respect there. I think on the documentary, the son says, she's in the zone, or something to that effect. Sarah's in the zone.
Well, I've known him since he was about 11.
Yeah, great.
To come in and watch me work when he was a kid. So
that's beautiful.
And now he's an artist in his own right.
Good on him. Good on him. Yeah. And you've done large, like in your earlier, in the earlier days of your career, you did some large installation work, and we'd love to put those up on the screen so people can see what we're talking about. But you were focusing on contrast and colour at that stage?
Yeah. So I had a commission for a restaurant in Oakland, California, and it was a 42-foot long wall, and
huge.
Yeah, it was really large. That was the largest piece
Yes.
that I made. And it was so large that I couldn't even really look at it in my studio in one go, right? You had to look at it in sections.
Yeah.
But I made it in sections and then
Yes.
pieced it together. And that particular piece was based on, there's a beautiful palace in Kyoto called Katsura Rikyu. And in that palace are some famous checkerboard indigo doors where they have blue and white panels. And that's a really, beautiful example of using the indigo blue and then the pattern on the door, and they change over time because the color starts to fade. It's just sort of an interesting and very quintessential part of Japanese aesthetic, that particular palace is. So anyway, that was the name of the piece. And I knew I needed something bold in that space because it was so big.
Yeah. It looks beautiful. I loved looking at the photos on your website. It was gorgeous. But tell me about blue. I mean, sitting here now.
Yes, you're kind of surrounded by blue, aren't you?
Is this indigo?
Well,
do you use indigo?
It depends on the piece.
Yeah.
So some of the prints that are behind you, a combination of paper and aquatint, do have indigo pigment mixed with other pigments. So I make my own blues, and I use a liquid pigment, and then I add a binder, and I paint each sheet in this series. But to be honest, the actual indigo color as a dye bath, I've tried dyeing washi fiber in indigo, and you can do it. You can put it in and dip it numerous times, but you really can only get a light blue with that particular technique.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful color. It's very serene and calming, and it just works so beautifully. Now, it'd be remiss if we didn't talk about your luminescence and how you that series, and
the Luminosity
a Luminosity series, and how you use phosphorescence. And I'm just impressed that I can say that.
Yeah, that's right.
I practiced.
Good job.
Is it seaweed? Is it?
No,
it's not.
It's not creatures.
It's not creatures.
No.
Okay, because there's a book that refers to phosphorescence as in the water.
Right. There is phosphorescence in nature in many places. There are also phosphorescent mushrooms.
Yes.
And plants, and they're finding more and more fish deep in the water. That are phosphorescent. The phosphorescence and the Luminosity series came to me as I was working on a moon series, and I was thinking about lighting the pieces I was making. I wanted to display them in a dark, like a black room, and have shifting light, like with spotlights. I was just sort of imagining this, that would be very interesting to have the light shift over the moon as if, it was coming in and out of the clouds. So as I was kind of getting ready to figure out how to do that in a show, I was introduced to the phosphorescent pigment. Somebody showed it to me, and I thought, oh, wow, that's really interesting. What if I had the glow right in the paper, and then I wouldn't have to rely on an outside source, the light.
Yeah.
So that was the germ of the idea, and then I had to see if it would work, right? Because I had tried when I first started working with washi, I tried using powdered pigments in the washi, and I watched some really expensive mineral pigments go down the drain. Yeah, it didn't hold. So the phosphorescent is also it's a powdered pigment, and it's made in the lab. It's not.
So it's synthetic.
Yeah. It's based on a similar idea to phosphorescence in nature. Yes, it's a very stable product, and it's also non-toxic.
Oh, great!
Which is important.
Yes. Yeah. I used to be a product developer, and at one point we were developing children's drink bottles, and we used I don't know if it was phosphorescence, but we used a synthetic glow-in-the-dark, and we put it into the plastic. And so the drink bottle would glow by the bedside table for the children at night so they could drink. And I remember when they discovered this, and it was in China that they discovered this product, and it was just like, wow, this is going to change everything. I mean, I think it was probably a bit novel the way they were using it, but it maybe a similar product. Maybe a similar product. But yeah, people are using it. I love how you're using it though. It's a little bit nicer.
Well, one of the things about when I make the pieces in this series is I actually make them in the daylight.
Yes. Okay.
So I have to imagine how they'll look at night.
Yeah.
And then, of course I can check them at night, but I tried working it, in darkness, and it was just too dangerous.
Yeah.
Especially with the vats, and things and different equipment.
Yeah. So it's almost like, you have you have the image in your mind, but then it reveals itself in the darkness and after it's complete.
Yes. And a lot of the pieces look completely different in the light and the dark.
Yes.
And so if I'm lucky, I get to show them to people first in the dark. That's my preferred way.
Oh, beautiful. Why is that?
I think it's more mysterious because you're wondering what it's going to look like in the light. And usually the darkened version is a little more, I guess, sort of simplified, more minimalized. So I think it's the proper order.
Yeah. I often say, without darkness, there is no light.
Yeah, that's...
like when something bad happens or, like, okay, well, something good will come, will follow. Yeah.
It's the contrast, right, and the balance.
Yeah. How long has this series been going for?
I started it in 2010.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, 13 years.
I guess so.
Yeah. And do you see it continuing?
Yes. So I have plans to do a show in Ohio, in a university gallery, probably next year.
How many times do people ask you, can you teach me how to do it?
Well, there's always that, right?
They want to know.
They want to know.
Yeah.
But, I like to say, it's better if you do the little research yourself.
Yeah, and develop it yourself.
Yeah. Ask the questions and come to the conclusions.
Yeah, and then develop it. Yeah. I wanted to ask you how you conceptualize your work. Like, the Luminosity series, how did that happen? Or, how do you conceptualize, I guess, and what's sort of your process?
How do I plan what I'm making? It really depends, but I spend a lot of time with the materials that I'm using. So if I'm using washi, I'll think about what I haven't done and how can I extend it into a new territory. And that doesn't always happen right away, but that's one way that I work. And now I'm doing a lot using woodblock. And I started out printing and using a very smooth surface with gradation, but then the wood grain just was really coming out. And I decided to accentuate that. And that sort of opened up into something else because it was just the beauty in the patterning. And I started to see other things that I wouldn't have just conceptualized on my own. Yeah, I do often have, I do preliminary, they're not really preliminary sketches, but I'll do a bunch of paintings that are related to the thing I'm exploring.
Yes.
But then I try to, especially with the multiple or even with the washi, I try not to have I'm not making an exact duplicate of a preliminary piece.
Yeah.
I like to keep it sort of fresh.
And there's an element of intuition that comes into the final pieces.
Yeah, or an element of when is a good time to stop. So sometimes the plan is for more detail or than the actual place I end up with, It just depends, Yeah. But you have to really, I don't know, I find lately that if I have more time to look at work, if I don't feel like I have to finish something quickly. With the washi, you have to be fairly quick because of the screen. I only have one screen set up, that large screen.
Yeah.
So until I finish the piece, I can't really start the next one. Right?
Yes.
So as far as a production flow, it's kind of important. But with the other work, if I have time to look at it, and a lot of times I'll see things that I want to take out. Yes. As opposed to adding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The reductive work is so beautiful to look at, but it's a lot harder to do. I feel it's harder to execute than something that's rather complex. Yeah,
because I think the tendency is that you want to put everything into the piece.
Yes,
right? And you don't always have to do, everything doesn't have to be all in just in one piece. Right?
Yeah. Less is more.
Can be.
Yeah.
If it's done skillfully.
Yes. Yeah. It feels so peaceful in here, and it's so, it is really, really serene and quiet. How do you find peace in such a huge, big city? I mean, I know Kyoto is smaller than Tokyo, but when we first arrived, like the first couple of days, I was like really quite overwhelmed. I was like, whoa, I don't think I've ever seen this many people in one space before. Right. Language barriers, transport barriers. It was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, I mean, how do you find peace here?
I minimalize my time in those places.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I go downtown and I go to Tokyo and I do that. But if I really want to work, I tend to get into the quiet. You can see the street is very quiet.
It's a beautiful area. Yeah.
So, and then of course we're right near a beautiful Daitokuji temple, right? And that's on one side, and then there's a shrine on another side. So it's actually a really nice part of town.
Yeah.
Kind of lends itself to that.
And
the thing about living in Japan is that, and especially Kyoto, there's such a tradition of crafts and arts, and people are so dedicated, and the skill level is so high, the development. And so you sort of feel like, even though I don't see other people working, I sort of feel like I'm in this pool of really, really wonderful, hundreds of year old tradition that has then moved into a contemporary sphere.
We went to the Museum of Art and Design yesterday. Was it Art and Craft or Design and Craft? Anyway, it was fantastic. Yeah, it was really good to see the history and 1,500 years of.
Right, Kyoto's old.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. I loved that. It was really good. We have a lot of fibre artists watching. Yes. And you have a series called The Red Thread.
Yes, that's
so
right.
I have to ask you about that.
So the red thread. So that's actually a term that's used in Zen practice. Oh. And what it refers to is passion as a road to enlightenment. And I always, in my work, I think of the red that I add infuses, which is often not a large amount of red, it's a small amount. So in the Red Thread series, there's red sort of coming in and out of the work, and that series has dimension. The washi comes off the back and it kind of undulates, and the red goes through that. So I just liked that. I liked the reference to the meaning of that phrase, and it was pretty literal to what I was doing. I was adding like a red thread to my work. So that's how it developed.
When material and meaning combines, it's kind of beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah. And so that was an interesting series too, because I was using a really thin paper called Tengu Joshi, which is made in Shikoku. It's a very thin mulberry tissue, and it's used a lot for mending documents and things.
Yes.
Comes in 9 thicknesses.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's really a specified thing in and of itself. So I tried a number of different thicknesses, and then the series developed as a way of working with transparency, and then also gradation, because a lot of the papers have blue gradations added to them.
Yes.
And then to make them 3-dimensional, I ended up backing them with silk.
Oh, wow.
So that they would be more flexible and I could roll them to send abroad.
Yes. Yeah, transportation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were quite large pieces?
Yeah. Some of them were really large. Yeah, the biggest one, I think, Tiger's Eye, was 6 by 6 feet.
Wow.
And that's in a museum in the States now.
Yeah. Your work is collected widely, and it's in the American Embassy here, the British Museum, the National Museum of Asian Art, the New York Public Library, Wow. I'm going to go there in June. Yes, I will make
It's a beautiful building.
Yeah, I will make sure I see your work. And and the American Embassy in Tokyo. Wow. Did you ever think back when you were backpacking through Japan that would ever be the case?
I wasn't thinking about that, right?
I know, right? It's an amazing career. So I'd love to take people for a little walk around your studio and see what you're working on now. And
I could do that.
Yeah, I'd love to. So Sarah, what are you working on here?
So here on this table, I have some printed aquatints on a very beautiful mulberry paper. And this is part of my new print appearance. And this is one part, and then the other part is also a mulberry-based fiber that I've made into a phosphorescent moon.
Wow. That is beautiful. It does look like a moon.
It does.
I know that was the intention, but the way the paper has the holes and you can imagine that they're the craters. And beautiful.
Right. So the fiber does part of the drawing for me. So these will get adhered onto an indigo piece of hand-painted washi.
Wow.
And then it becomes the finished. And then there's, that's basically it. I'll show you when we look at the print.
Yeah. And have you had a sneak peek at this under darkness?
Yes.
You have?
Yes. So I had them all, the ones I've made so far lined up on the floor.
Yeah. And how many are in this series so far?
26.
26. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That would have been quite a beautiful scene to see them laying out on the floor.
Yes, it was beautiful.
Yeah. Gorgeous. Sorry to ask the question about the phosphorescence. Does it charge under any light or does it need to be natural light?
It needs to have some UV in it.
UV light.
Fluorescent light has some UV, and so does daylight.
Yeah. Okay. And these are some of your woodblock printings?
Yeah, so I'm working on a series of woodblock prints. They're monotypes, and this piece is called Appearance, and it has, you can see it's a diptych, and this is called Appearance. This is called Reverberate. And so this is about the water reverberating from like a drop in the pond. And it's printed with 2 blocks. And I purposely have left the wood grain to be very prominent. Yeah.
It's beautiful. The contrast between the light and the dark it's subtle, but it's actually like at the same time there's great contrast.
There's great contrast, yeah. So I try a number of versions and play with the contrast and play, you can play with the way it's printed. And that keeps it quite interesting.
And is this a different type of washi paper?
This is actually cotton paper. And it takes the print really well.
So light too, isn't
it's
it?
Somerset.
Yeah.
And because it's a bleed print, goes all the way to the edge of the paper. I just found that this took the delicacy of the print in a more crisp fashion, and that's what I wanted for this series. So, yeah, I use all sorts of paper.
I bet.
This is another example of just a piece that has a lot of, wood grain texture. Kind of looks like clouds.
Yeah, it does. That is beautiful.
And if you look at it from another angle, it might look like a mountain.
It's so serene.
So I was talking a little bit to a curator who came to my open studio, and she was telling me about that there's a term in Japanese called mitate.
Imadate.
And it talks about the idea of using one thing to suggest something else. So you see it in gardens, like you were at Ryoanji Garden, where there'll be a rock that it's supposed to be a mountain, right? And so she was saying that this was very much in that tradition of, that these lines that are made from the wood grain suggest water, even though they're from wood.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes. And similar to the stones that you could think that they were water or clouds, that they scraped into the garden there. That was just beautiful. Yeah, with the rocks coming out. It's amazing. Islands or peaks of mountains.
That's
or,
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of the micro and macro idea that you could take something really small, but imagine it really large.
Really large. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. So let's go have a look at what's on the press.
Okay. This is Appearance. It's a new piece that I'm working on, and it's sitting under this is a mylar pattern that I use when I'm putting the different pieces together. So you can see it's kind of a layout of the entire image.
And this is done prior to, so you map it out and then you create this?
Well, yeah, so I have a prototype, and then from the prototype I make this, and then that allows me to duplicate.
Ah, I see.
Because, it's an edition, right? They're 26.
Yes.
And you can't just eyeball it. You need something
Yes.
to refer to, right?
Yeah. And the moon changes on each.
Yeah, because it's hand done, and, there's no way I can make them exactly the same. So there's slight variations.
Yeah.
That's what makes them unique.
Yeah.
It's all very hands-on. Even the background papers are slightly different color, and, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. That's amazing. Are these going to be part of an exhibition?
Yes. Well, I'm getting ready for an exhibition in New York in November.
Oh.
So I'm quite excited about that.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is exciting. And these will be...
Well, actually, mostly for that exhibition, it'll be mostly the woodblock prints.
Okay. Yes.
Woodblock monotypes, and then some larger pieces. We haven't exactly curated the whole show yet. But I'll be working with the people at the gallery.
So this series of 26, will it be shown anywhere in its entirety, or is it kind of like a limited edition?
It's a limited edition.
So people can buy them individually?
Right. So they've gone out to the different galleries that represent me.
Yes.
They have copies of them.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice to know how it all works. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the beauties of a multiple.
Mm.
Because you can have them in more than one place, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And yet it's still original.
Right.
That's what I like about it. It's
Right.
not
No,
it's an
everything
actual
is-
print. It's still an original. Yeah. Yeah. It's just beautiful. How many more do you have to go?
I have about 11 more in this one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a few more weeks' work.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
take a long time.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. And so what's next for you, Sarah?
Well, I guess the show is really next.
Yeah.
Getting ready for that. I'm trying some woodblock prints on silk right now, too. Because I am imagining that I can scroll them that way.
Yes.
If they're printed on silk, it's much easier. So I'm doing some tests, and actually the wood grain prints quite nicely on the silk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll be mounting some silk tonight to get ready for tomorrow.
Yeah. To
So I have
keep working tomorrow.
Yeah.
And do you work here? This is where you work?
Yes. So
Yeah.
this is my print studio.
Yeah.
And I have another studio at home that I work on the larger paperworks there.
Yeah. Beautiful. Oh, that's lucky.
It is.
Yeah. It's nice to have two spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And what do you do over here?
Oh, so this is the inking table.
Yeah. Right.
So this is it's got a heating element underneath,
Yeah.
and you can heat up this copper plate.
Yeah.
And so when I've got a copper plate that I'm inking,
Yeah.
it keeps it consistent temperature.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And the ink goes here,
Yeah.
the prints go here.
Wow. Look at all this paper.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. What a beautiful place. So tell us about these pieces.
Yeah, so this is a piece I'm working on. It's part of a series, and it's called Light Appears. And it's about, the light coming out of the darkness and sort of pulsating in the distance. So this will be exhibited along with, this is another piece called The Hermit.
The Hermit. Oh, yes. I see him.
You do? Yeah. So this is actually a woodblock monotype with the addition of a washi figure in the piece. And this is a work in progress that I haven't actually titled it yet, but I'm really interested in the movement and the kind of zappiness of the color. It's a little bit different than the others, which are a lot stiller.
Almost like the Northern Lights. I can imagine them sort of moving and fading in and out. Like,
yeah. And then the last piece here is called the Falls. And that is a very big waterfall in Wakayama Prefecture that I was really impressed by. So I'm trying to work with just the, you know, the dynamic quality of this enormous for Japan.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
waterfall.
Yeah, of course.
And then the feeling of what it feels like to stand next to it. So often the figure for me points to scale. If with the figure, then you know how big the landscape is.
Of course, yeah, it gives you a frame of reference. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful. I love how the wood grain, it just looks like it's falling. And
And
you know,
it's that feeling of the water coming down and cascading down.
And then the way you've captured the light as if it's the mist of the water, like the spray. It's really beautiful. So Sarah, if people wanted to learn more about your work, or you've got some beautiful books here, and I just really wanted to share that with everybody in case they wanted to learn more. So tell us about this one. This one's called Inner Light, and this was about a solo exhibition that you had?
I did, yes. I made the book right around the time I had a show called Inner Light at Komyoin Temple, and I had artwork throughout the temple. So the pieces that were shown, actually it's really kind of a selection of my major pieces in washi, the paperworks, the original works.
Yeah. And yeah, you can see Sarah's work in progress as well. So we were talking about what they look like laying on the floor, and like there's an example of it. Yeah, that is beautiful. That is gorgeous. And they're available on your website?
Yes, they are. And they'll also be in the show this November at Ronin Gallery in New York.
Great. And then this one is The Complete Prints. So 1980 to 2018. So that's pretty amazing. Yeah. What a career. And it's heavy. It's a big book.
Yeah, there are 238 pieces or something like that in there.
Wow. Yeah. Celebrating a beautiful career. So if you're interested in washi paper and the beautiful work of Sarah Brayer, please, head to the website and have a look. There's also some beautiful videos there. There's a documentary there that took 2 years to produce, and I'm just in awe of it. I just think it's shot beautifully, and well done for doing it, especially during COVID as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
It was a great project, and they did a wonderful job.
Yeah. Well, on behalf of everyone at Fibre Arts Take Two, thank you so much for having us in your space and spending this time with us. Sarah is a working, exhibiting artist. She's collected all over the world, and we've been so lucky to spend this time with you. So,
thank you.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed it.
Arigato.
はい。よろしく。